Early one morning, John was walking in the woods near his cabin. Suddenly, he stopped. A piercing howl sounded in the area. He set down his camping gear and slowly walked closer to peer through the brush. In the clearing, he came face to face with a huge timber wolf. Its legs seemed to be caught in a trap, and it tried to break free. But then he seemed to give up and lay back down. The wolf looked tired, as if it had lost all hope. John was shocked. He wanted to help the animal, but as he got closer, he became frightened and tried to pull on the chains. The wolf growled and his hair stood up, but it was more out of fear than genuine anger. John backed away, not wanting to risk hurting himself. But then he noticed something he had not expected. The wolf was clearly a female, but that alone was not the surprising thing. Her teats were full of milk. That meant there had to be babies somewhere, eagerly waiting for their mother if they were still alive. Nursing pups can't survive very long without their mother. If John wanted to reunite the pups with their mother, he had to act quickly. But he could not get closer to the animal without fear that the she-wolf would hurt him. For a wild animal was unpredictable in such a stressful situation. The she-wolf was almost dying. It seemed that she had lost a lot of blood from the injury to her leg. If left alone, it would be her certain death. John didn't want it to come to that. After everything he had already experienced in his life, he had become the kind of person who never gave up. And he wasn't ready to give up on this dying wolf mother either. He realized that every second he wasted could mean that either this wolf or one of her babies wouldn't make it. He had to act now. Unsure how to get the she-wolf's leg out of the trap, John summoned all his courage. Carefully, he touched her paw. To his surprise, she did not react. She was already completely out of it. It was now or never. He carefully held the she-wolf's head with one hand. With the other hand, he pressed the button on the trap to release it. But it didn't open. It was stuck. It was also bent, which probably happened when the she-wolf tried to escape. John didn't have time to think. He grabbed a rock and hit the trap's release button. He kept hitting it until it popped open. Then, with all his strength, he lifted the she-wolf onto his shoulder and dragged her to his cabin. It was only a few hundred meters away, but it still took him almost an hour. He put the she-wolf down next to the fireplace. She was totally hypothermic. When the house had warmed up, he was able to look at the she-wolf's injuries, which he cleaned and tended with his first aid kit. John had medical training and knew exactly what to do. Her leg was injured, but fortunately not broken. If he had waited any longer, she would have lost her leg for sure. Now he just hoped that he could save her life in time as well. Slowly, she began to show signs of life. When she growled at him again for the first time, he knew she would be okay. She needed him to recover, but she didn't want him to get too close. Knowing she would eventually wake up, John decided to take her out of the house to the front porch. After he had taken care of the mother wolf and she was feeling better, he set out to find the pups. But where could John even begin to find a den of wolf pups? The cubs couldn't be too far away because a she-wolf doesn't stray far from her cubs. Because of his past in the Canadian military, he had a lot of survival and tracking skills. He would have to use all of his skills to save the babies. He searched the area for clues and eventually did indeed find them. After a long search, something caught his eye. It was hidden, but there was an opening to a hole in the ground. Hopefully, this was the cave he had been looking for. The only problem now was getting the wolf pups to come out. They were trained to stay inside until they heard their mother, even if that might mean their death. John was determined to do his best. He tried his best wolf call. Nothing happened. He tried again, but still nothing. He was wondering if it was dangerous to go into the cave when suddenly a little tiny wolf came out. He howled with hunger. That was probably one of the main reasons he was willing to risk coming out without hearing his mother's voice. After the first baby came out, the others soon followed. Knowing he could never carry all four, he carefully placed them all in a bag and sealed it. John had to check to see if there were any other cubs in the den. It's never a good idea to stick your head in a wolf den, but the thought that he might have left one behind was unacceptable. He had to make sure. He lay flat on his stomach and crawled inside. Fortunately, it wasn't as deep as he had imagined. The man searched the den, but there were no other wolves to be seen. He could leave the area with a clear conscience, knowing that no pups had remained. He grabbed a bag of pups and went back to their mother. It felt surreal to be carrying a bag of wolf pups. The mother pup must have heard her soft whimper as he approached, for she began to howl. Carefully, he set the pups down and let one by one join their mother. He hoped that his scent on the pups would not cause the mother to reject them. The puppies recognized their mother and all ran right up to her. She sniffed them, and for a moment, John held his breath. Would she recognize them? The rugged adventurer became emotional as she began licking the puppies. She lay down, and soon the pups were drinking happily. The she-wolf had been with John for a while now, and she had to be hungry and thirsty. He brought her some pieces of meat and tossed them to her piece by piece. She didn't like to trust him, but she gladly accepted the food he gave her. After all, she had no other choice. John had to go out every day to get fish or meat for the wolves and firewood, and he left his door open so the wolf pups could go inside to get warm. But he didn't expect them to invite friends to visit. But that's exactly what happened. When John returned one day, he was in for a big shock. His backyard was swarming with a whole pack of wolves. They had come to check on the she-wolf. That must have been her family looking for the she-wolf and her cubs. But that he would encounter a pack of wolves in his backyard was something he was not prepared for. For a moment, John froze in fear. The pups came running up to him, thrilled to see their friend. But the big wolves all turned around, growled, and stood with their hackles up. It looked like they were ready to attack. Then suddenly one of the wolves gave a loud bark. It was the she-wolf that John had helped. As soon as she barked, all the other wolves backed away and seemed to relax completely. Still, John did not underestimate the danger of a pack of wolves. He quickly went into his cabin and locked the door behind him. After a few more days, John could see that the she-wolf was getting better. Soon she could stand up again and a few days later even walk around. After a few more days, one morning she barked at her pups and they all got up and followed her. John understood that they were leaving for good. He never saw the pack, the she-wolf, or the cubs again, but he knew that 4 little wolf pups and a she-wolf owed their lives to him. Did you like the video? Then leave us a subscription. If this story touched you as much as it touched us, you should watch this video. A baby elephant gets into a terrible situation. Then the unthinkable happens. Click here to see the full story.